with a clear directive to pressure an American destroyer into altering its course and to demonstrate that Iran still claimed control over these waters. An aging Iranian naval helicopter lifted off with a mission rooted more in symbolism than combat power. What followed revealed that Tehran could inflict more disruption through rhetoric and staged confrontation than through the outdated military hardware it brought into the air. Inside the American destroyer's Combat Information Center, sailors observed the unfolding encounter on their radar displays with a mix of disbelief and restrained amusement. The most sophisticated naval radar system ever deployed, engineered to track intercontinental ballistic missiles beyond the atmosphere, was now focused on what amounted to a flying relic attempting to intimidate a modern 10,000-ton warship. The helicopter's objectives were straightforward and political. It was tasked with gathering intelligence on American naval operations, attempting to coerce the destroyer into changing course so Iran could claim operational control of the surrounding waters, and generating footage that could be used as a propaganda victory. This narrative was intended to offset the strategic humiliation Iran had recently suffered, with its nuclear infrastructure destroyed by Northrop Grumman B-2 Spirit bombers. The tactic followed a familiar template dating back to the tanker wars of the 1980s, when smaller and expendable platforms were used to harass larger vessels in hopes of provoking an excessive response that could be exploited diplomatically. But this was no longer 1987, and the ship in question was not a defenseless merchant tanker. The American vessel was the USS Fitzgerald, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer that embodied the technological dominance of the United States Navy. The ship carried 90 vertical launch system cells capable of firing missiles that could strike targets more than 90 nautical miles away. 4 gas turbine engines generated a combined 100,000 shaft horsepower, allowing sustained speeds exceeding 30 knots. At the heart of the ship was the Aegis combat system, a fully integrated network able to track more than 100 airborne and surface targets simultaneously while guiding dozens of missiles to their intercept points. As the helicopter appeared on sensors, the system assigned it track number 0341, and the onboard threat library immediately classified it as a 1970s-era anti-submarine warfare export platform. Its assessed threat level was negligible. Within seconds, the combat system had already calculated 47 separate engagement solutions using different weapons. In a wartime scenario, the sequence would have been brutally brief. Radar would achieve fire control lock, an illuminator would paint the target, a standard missile too would launch, and the helicopter would disintegrate into debris. Instead, the pinnacle of American naval engineering continued on its course, while being approached by a helicopter that Iran had originally purchased from the United States before the Islamic Revolution, back when the aircraft itself represented cutting-edge technology. The Iranian helicopter's APN-130 Doppler radar, a system dating back to the Vietnam War, broadcast its position to every American sensor within hundreds of meters. The Fitzgerald's SLQ-32 electronic warfare suite immediately began cataloging every electromagnetic emission from the aircraft. This system functioned as a digital fingerprint collector, recording frequency, pulse repetition rate, and signal strength to construct a unique electromagnetic profile. Every radar sweep, radio transmission, and navigation beacon was logged and added to a threat library. This information would later become electronic warfare ammunition. In future encounters, American jamming systems would know precisely which frequencies to disrupt, which signals to spoof, and how to blind the helicopter's sensors. What required a full minute of analysis during this encounter would become instant recognition later. Without realizing it, the Iranian crew was actively teaching the Americans how to defeat them. Inside the helicopter, conditions were far less controlled. The crew wrestled as much with their own aging equipment as with the turbulent air. The cyclic control stick vibrated from worn rotor bearings that should have been replaced decades earlier. Warning lights flickered across the instrument panel, many of them disconnected because replacement parts had become unobtainable after the fall of the Shah. The pilot checked the fuel gauge and quickly calculated their margin. Fighting a headwind while attempting to match the destroyer's speed left them with roughly 45 minutes on station, assuming both engines continued to operate. Meanwhile, the Aegis system continued to hold 47 separate solutions for destroying the helicopter using Standard Missile 2 surface-to-air missiles. Each missile cost more than the helicopter itself, traveled at 3.5 times the speed of sound, and could sustain 10 times the force of gravity during terminal maneuvering. The helicopter's maximum speed was approximately 140 knots in a dive. The imbalance was extreme, yet from the Iranian perspective, the mission was non-negotiable. Orders had been issued to confront the American warship and project the image that the Arabian Gulf remained under Iranian control. On the destroyer's bridge, the radar operator reported the helicopter's approach vector with the same calm used for noting floating debris. The officer of the deck acknowledged without urgency. The close-in weapons system automatically tracked the aircraft, but its barrels remained level.
designed to defeat supersonic missiles, tracking this slow, subsonic aircraft was trivial. As the helicopter closed within 10 miles, the intelligence team's interest increased, not from concern, but from opportunity. Every second the aircraft remained airborne provided valuable data to refine electronic threat libraries.
The Iranian pilot then pushed the collective forward, diving the Sikorsky SH-3 Sea King toward the destroyer in what he believed to be an aggressive profile. The helicopter descended to 500 feet above the water, its airframe groaning under stress it had not been designed to endure. This maneuver followed established Iranian harassment tactics, flying low and making close passes to provoke a reaction while transmitting on civilian frequencies to claim innocence if challenged. The ultimate goal was footage that could be framed as domination of an American warship, suitable for broadcast on state television. Through the scratched plexiglass windscreen, the pilot could see the USS Fitzgerald holding its course, its wake cutting steadily through the Gulf. Over the radio came the scripted warning, delivered in accented English, declaring that the American ship was approaching Iranian territorial waters and must change course immediately. Every transmission was recorded aboard the destroyer, whose crew knew they had been operating in international waters all morning. To underscore the absurdity, a female sailor responded calmly over the radio, further undermining the attempted intimidation. At the same time, the SLQ-32 suite conducted full-spectrum analysis of the helicopter's emissions. The Iranian crew was using unencrypted commercial aviation and maritime frequencies, including 121.5 MHz and 243 MHz emergency channels. Every frequency was cataloged. In future confrontations, American jammers would be able to suppress these communications almost instantly. Through the Link 16 tactical data network, this entire encounter was shared in real time with a cruiser 50 nautical miles away, an aircraft carrier 200 miles distant, and every connected aircraft and surface combatant in the area. All units saw the same track data, firing solutions, and engagement options simultaneously, protected by National Security Agency certified encryption. Inside the helicopter, fuel reserves dropped rapidly as the crew attempted to keep pace with the destroyer moving at 30 knots. The port engine oil pressure fluctuated dangerously. The General Electric T-58 engines, once producing 1,400 horsepower each during the 1960s, now struggled under the strain. On the Fitzgerald, the bridge team treated the flyover as a routine curiosity. The Sea-Whiz close-in weapons system operator used the moment for manual tracking practice, calculating that a 1.2-second burst of 20mm rounds would achieve a 98% probability of catastrophic destruction if required. The destroyer's executive officer entered the Combat Information Center to observe what had become an intelligence windfall. When he confirmed that the Iranian crew was using clear voice communications, the tactical action officer noted with amusement that they could hear personal complaints over the radio. The helicopter made another pass, this time over the stern. Sailors on deck continued routine maintenance, one even offering a casual wave. The psychological impact of being ignored cut deeper than any hostile action. As the encounter dragged on, the Iranian pilot issued a final warning, his voice strained and lacking authority. By now, the true objective was evident. The mission was never about forcing the destroyer to retreat. It was about recording audio warnings and manufacturing a narrative of defended sovereignty for domestic consumption. The Fitzgerald's crew did not respond. They were focused on legitimate navigation tasks, including a scheduled course adjustment unrelated to the helicopter. Understanding American naval defense doctrine made the imbalance even clearer. The destroyer operated layered engagement zones, with long-range interception by Standard Missile-2, medium-range coverage by the evolved Sea Sparrow missile, and point defense by the Sea-Whiz system. In a real conflict, the helicopter would never have reached even the outer perimeter. Inside the SH-3, reality finally asserted itself. Fuel dropped to 800 pounds, engine temperatures rose, and oil pressure fell into the red. The crew chief signaled the pilot that it was time to leave before the aircraft became a search and rescue case. When the destroyer executed its routine course correction toward the next waypoint, the Iranian pilot immediately declared victory over the radio, claiming the American warship was retreating. Back in the Combat Information Center, the intelligence team ensured all recordings were preserved. Within hours, Iranian state media would present the encounter as a triumph, accompanied by dramatic music and selective footage. The reality that an irreplaceable aircraft had been risked to briefly inconvenience a morning watch team would remain unspoken. If you like deep dive in military, please don't forget like, comment, share, and subscribe for more informative videos. Thanks for watching.